Okay, well, once again, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Chantal Aubrey, and I'm the Manager of Business Development here at Emergence. I'm pleased to be your moderator here today and to welcome you to this Kwik Tag webinar this morning, where we'll be showing you not only how you can go paperless, but also how you can save time and money by automating some of your processes. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. In order to keep the flow of the presentation moving along and on schedule, the audience is on mute today, but we still want to make sure that we keep this interactive. So we're going to ask you to please type in your questions in the side panel, and we'll review all of your questions and answer those at the end of the presentation. Now, because we have a few people in attendance today that are new to Emergence, I'm going to give you a super quick overview of Emergence. We are a Bermuda-based organization and a business solutions provider. Our primary focus, and what we're probably known for the most, is the implementation and support of business platforms such as Dynamics GP and Dynamics CRM. But we also have a large focus on corporate performance management, corporate reporting, business intelligence, and business automation. We do have a staff of 35 people. That includes solution architects, business analysts, accountants, and functional and technical consultants. We have people who've been with the organization for 10, 15, and even 20 years, but we also have a lot of new people as well. Emergence hired 8 people, I believe it is, in the last year alone. So our recruitment efforts are still very much ongoing and definitely in growth mode, which is always a great place to be. We have over 150 clients here in Bermuda, many of which have offices overseas, so we support many of those offices as well. We have a balanced portfolio of financial services companies, distribution companies, and local and international businesses. And finally, we have access to a large network of trusted solution partners. Microsoft has a very large ecosystem of third-party vendors. So we spend a lot of time evaluating new partners to bring solutions that meet the requirements of our clients and the Bermuda market in general. And that's exactly how we came to partner with ImageTag. We were looking for a solution that could offer superior content management and workflow to help our clients go paperless and also streamline their processes to improve both their service levels and their bottom line. So after evaluating several solutions, we decided on Kwik Tag. It's been several years now since we've established the partnership, and it's been a great addition to our portfolio. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today. Mary Miller is ImageTag's Director of Sales and Marketing. She has 20 years of B2B technology marketing experience, and she really sparks motivation with a lead by example approach. As the Director of Sales and Marketing for ImageTag, Mary is responsible for all sales and marketing programs, and she said that her goal at ImageTag is to share the Kwik Tag One System message, which is to manage any document in any department in any process. And I know she's really excited to share that message with you here today. So without any further delay, I'll pass it over to you, Mary.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be with all of you today, and we're really excited to work with Chantal and getting this message out to the market, and especially to Emergence customers and those that work with them. So welcome, and thank you for spending some time with us today. Now, Chantal mentioned that we're really excited to share the message of going paperless. And if you notice the title on the first slide, it's Go Way Beyond Paperless, and learn what you can do with automation and how you can save time and money and reduce your stress and all of the things that go along with a very busy, cumbersome, time-consuming manual process. And most of those that we see in organizations rely around this thing that you're looking at the image of on the screen right now, and that's paper. And I don't know why we got started this way, but for whatever reason, we still like to touch it and feel it and print it. In fact, research shows that every piece of paper that comes into your organization gets copied, reproduced, scanned, shared, reprinted, and the like up to 10 times. So paper is expensive, and it really takes a toll not only on the cost of the box of that paper and the cases and the reams and the pallets of them in some cases that come into your organization, but it takes a toll on the process that it becomes a part of. In fact, all of that printing and sharing and reproducing can add up to, again, research suggests about 31 times the cost of that actual paper. So it's important to think about why you should transform your business. It's important to think about why you should consider going paperless and why you should do it in a perfect world with the same system that can also help you automate other parts of your business, especially those cumbersome manual paper-based processes. For example, today we'll look at some specifically around AP automation. We'll focus mostly on AP automation. We'll talk a little bit about expense management, and we'll also talk a little bit about other areas of the business, such as HR and sales orders and the like. All of the areas that if you look down the hallway of your offices today, there's probably file cabinets, in some cases storage rooms. We were at one customer where they had an office full floor to ceiling, just wall to wall file cabinets with nothing but boxes. Imagine trying to find something when you need to get it for your business to make decisions on or for audit purposes and the like. So paper is expensive, not only for the cost of it, but also in the delay of finding it and dealing with it when you need to move a business process forward. Now, specifically around accounts payable, what's the role of paper and how does it factor into the cost and the process and the burden and the stress that goes along with paying our AP invoices? I mean, let's face it, we all have to pay the bills, right? It's keep the lights on, it's make sure the vendors are happy, make sure our customers are happy. And that comes with a cost, not only for the paper that those invoices come in on, but the time delay that it takes. On average, it takes about 35 to 40 days in most organizations for an invoice to manually route its way through a business from the point of receipt to getting an approval. Maybe somebody else has to do some amount of coding and maybe some additional level of approval depending on the dollar amount, until ultimately that invoice is finally approved and entered into the ERP system. Now, the ERP system we're going to focus on mostly today is Dynamics GP. So as Chantal mentioned, that's where you all have a lot of your usage in the dynamic space. So that's what we're going to focus our examples on. There's others, of course, that we integrate with, but what we're going to focus on today is Dynamics GP, and specifically the use of AP automation software within the world of Dynamics GP. So the slide that you're looking at now shows some interesting stats. It represents organizations that are using AP automation software and those that are not using AP automation software. So back to our message about paper a moment ago, if you look at that very first set of bar charts on the left-hand side of the screen, 48% of organizations are still receiving invoices on paper. Now you can see a good mix, a decent mix, I would say, that receive them via email as well, and then assorted other formats. This represents the way that invoices are coming into the organization, and if they're using automation software, how they are receiving their invoices today. So still a very heavy percentage, very strong percentage of companies that are receiving invoices via paper. Even those using AP automation software, you can see 28% of those organizations still receive their invoices on paper. And we call that the sneaker net. Now, I know a lot of us use the internet for a lot of things and routing things and looking things up and having that digital access, everything at our fingertips, right? Well, in this case, what's at our fingertips is a piece of paper, even in some cases, if we're using AP automation software. So we're going to look at how we can decrease that amount of paper in our organization and accelerate the time so that we're not looking at 35 days or 40 days or longer to process invoices, but in some cases, ideally, we see less than 5, in fact, for those organizations that are truly streamlining their process. Now, if you're like most organizations, this chart represents the challenges that you experience today if you're processing your invoices and other corporate business processes manually. But specifically when it comes to AP, what are some of the biggest challenges? Well, the number one challenge you can see highlighted here by representation of this circle, and this represents, of course, all company sizes. So the various bar colors represent different company sizes, but chances are you're somewhere in this mix from either the SME to the upper middle market to, of course, enterprise size organizations. But these challenges represent manual data entry and inefficient process, the number one reason. So anything we can do to accelerate that time, shave a few seconds off here, a few minutes off there, a few days off in some other part of the process, think of what that's going to do in your organization to accelerate your AP processes. Some other common challenges: manually routing of invoices around for approval. As I mentioned, sometimes you have to sneaker net, walk it from one office to the next. Well, what if the person who needs to approve or edit isn't in your office? Now we're talking about couriers and mail service, and we have customers who have been using, FedEx delivery systems so that once a week, twice a week, whatever it takes, they're sending a whole package of invoices and supporting documentation from one office to another just so that they can get somebody's approval and GL codes, because that's the way they've always done it. And they've relied, of course, very heavily on paper for those steps and those processes. And of course, the number three reason and challenge here, again, we come back to paper. The majority of invoices received are on paper. So the first thing that we encourage organizations to do when they're encountering these challenges: manual routing, lost and missing invoices, manual data entry, decentralized invoices. All of these things create errors. They create duplicate payments potentially. They create the risk of things being delayed, vendors not getting paid on time, and ultimately a very long process. So the first thing that we encourage organizations to do is make the document digital as soon as possible in the process. Now, again, Chantal mentioned that I like to share the one system message. What does that mean? Well, if you have one system in place to manage all of your documents, which is what we represent by the capture indication here, the first thing that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, the capture the document digitally as early as possible in the process. That means that if you can go to your vendors and say, hey, could you email me those invoices by chance? Could you maybe not send them to me via mail? Because when you send them to me in the post, I have to have somebody in a mailroom or an administrative staff, or they go to even the decision maker's desk. They sit there, they wait for the person to get back from the next day or lunch or a trip or travel or meetings or whatever, till they have time to go through and open the mail. Once they've opened the mail, they realize, oh, this is an invoice. I've got to take this over to accounting. Well, who knows how long it takes between that process and when the person receives the invoice in the mail and gets it to accounting. Well, then accounting has, of course, another stack of invoices that they're working through today, so it sits and waits until whenever it is that they get to it. So by sending this message, by encouraging vendors to take that first step to help you go digital in this process by emailing invoices in instead of mailing them, your message back to them is quite simple. Listen, we're going to be able to pay you faster if you can get us the document digitally. And oftentimes that gets their attention. People like to get paid faster. And at a very minimum, it will give you visibility into the document as soon as they send it in. So even if it doesn't actually get them paid faster, it's going to give you the visibility and control instead of having a document sitting on somebody's desk. So capture the document digitally as early in the process as possible is step one when you want to go paperless and begin your digital transformation process within your organization. The second thing we look at is integration. And again, we're going to talk specifically about integration with Dynamics GP. But the more integrated the documents that you use to run your business, in this case, again, accounts payable invoices, for example, are integrated with the system that you use to make those decisions and pay those bills and manage your finances and manage your GLs and produce your financial statements, the more integrated those things are, the less you need to get up and run down the hall or log into other systems or chase information that's stored in that office of filing cabinets and wall to floor, floor to wall ceilings of file cabinets and shelves with boxes. So integrated into the system gives you that instant access to the documents that are critical to your organization. And finally, automate. So we call this our three-step simple process to automate any business process. Capture the documents digitally, integrate very closely with your ERP system or other core business systems, and then automate. Take that process of running up and down the hall or sending things from office to office for editing and approval and GL coding and the like to a click of a button. Once you start the workflow process, KwikTag does the rest. Okay, so we're going to route to however many levels of approval you need for your invoices. If somebody else needs to do the coding, that's great too. There'll be step 1, step 2, step 3 in the process. And then upon final approval, you want those invoices to be automatically created inside Dynamics GP along with the document that has been routed digitally for approval. So you've now cut that time of 35 to 40 days down to about 5 or less in many cases. So you've saved time and you're going to be able to have visibility into the process and get your vendors paid faster, should you so choose to do that. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like. I'm going to give you a demonstration of KwikPayables, which is our AP automation solution here at KwikTag. And I'm also going to, again, highlight a little bit about our expense management solution, and we'll talk about HR and some other areas as well. But we're going to focus mostly on how to automate this process that we've just described as the very paper-based manual process of essentially paying our bills. So I'm going to switch over to another screen here, and I'm going to go into my demo environment. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at the KwikTag interface online, and what KwikTag at our core, remember we want to capture the documents digitally as early as possible in any process. At our core, KwikTag is a document management platform. Now, given our out-of-the-box integration with GP, for every screen inside of GP, and there's about 79 of them, that KwikTag has a document management feature automatically associated with, we create what we call a digital drawer in KwikTag. So what you're looking at is a digital filing system. So imagine looking outside of your office, whether you're in accounting or legal or HR or finance or whatever, and not seeing those rows and rows of file cabinets or wall-to-wall rooms of storage boxes and the like. Imagine having all of those documents in a digital filing system whereby you can simply go straight to the drawer. Maybe it's applicant information, maybe it's bank information. As you can see, I'm scrolling through this list here. Maybe it's employee information once they've already been hired, fixed assets and payables and the like. And you can see I've starred a few favorites here because those are the ones we're going to highlight for our AP process and the automation thereof, especially for our payables transaction entry workflow. Now, once we have these documents digitally, we have, if there is a workflow history associated, we have complete audit trail associated with them. If it is just a document being stored, we can instantly find those documents whether we are inside of GP or here in KwikTag. So here's your digital filing system for your GP related documents. Now, a quick note about the document management platform is that if you go up to this site list that I'm clicking on here up at the top left-hand corner, we have a lot of other areas. You can see I've got finance, I've got human resources, I've got expenses, I've got legal, I've got travel, I've got a whole nother business because I'm managing 3 different GP companies here. So I can create additional sites and drawers even if I'm not using workflow, even if I just want to make that really expensive paper go away, and create digital filing systems, digital drawers for other areas of my business. It's as simple as creating an additional site and creating the drawers that belong to that site. So by way of example, if you've got human resources that should only see applicant and employee information and payroll and benefit and training materials, those documents would go in the human resources site. If you've got expenses to manage, those would only be visible to the people responsible for those within those sites and within the corresponding drawers. So again, KwikTag is your digital filing system, okay? It's your document management system. And on top of that, we add workflow because that becomes a very common experience for people who, now that they've gotten rid of the paper, they want to be able to automate it, just like we talked about before, get rid of all of those manual steps of running around. So what does that look like? Well, as I mentioned, we encourage our vendors to email in their invoices. That's step 1. Now, if you still receive them in paper, that's fine. We can scan them in and KwikTag can take an image and display it for you right here. So what I'm showing you here is we're going to put our AP manager hat on. And I used to be an AP manager. I know what this is like. I would come in every morning to a stack of sometimes invoices that somebody in the mailroom had maybe opened for me, and other times just a stack of envelopes that I would have to go through and open and process on my own. So I've got this stack of invoices. Well, now I have this digital stack. We call it a work queue. So we have a work queue of all of our invoices in my example, I have emailed these in. Again, they could be just as easily have arrived in paper, and they would be scanned in, and KwikTag would take it from there. They would show up in the same work queue. They would be processed by your accounting staff the exact same way. So we have our AP manager hat on, and we see this list on the left-hand side of all of these invoices that have arrived in our environment. And we can just click through them and see the invoices on the right-hand side and decide which ones we're going to rush pay or which ones we're just going to kind of go, first in, first out sort of a process. And I come to this one for advanced office systems and I say, you know what, we've really been needing these tablet cases, so I better get on this invoice right away. They're calling, they're yelling at me, they're saying, hey, where's your payment? Where's our payment? I need to, if you want these, you need to pay this bill. So great, that's the one we're going to work with. And I right click on that invoice and I'm given a selection of workflow options. Now in your organization, you're probably only going to have one or two. Our most common ones are those that go from an accounting person to somebody else to edit or add the GL codes and then finally an approver, or from accounting straight to an approval process and then create in GP. So that's the path we'll take with this invoice, but just know that those workflow options are going to be tailored for your business process, for your requirements. So we'll say, okay, great, this is a new invoice and I know who the approver is for advanced office systems because all invoices that come for office supplies from advanced office systems go to our CFO. So what does that look like? Well, in my experience here, I first have to make a couple of decisions. Remember when we looked in the KwikTag system, we saw Fabricam as one of our GP companies and Margie's Travel and Wingtip Toys. So benefit number one is I don't have to log in and out of GP every time I want to switch GP companies. I am connected to the GP databases and I can simply select what company this invoice is for. Well, I can see right here that this invoice is coming to Fabricam. So I select that as my GP company. And then I see this invoice is from Advanced Office Systems. I typed AD just like I would in GP. I have type ahead functionality and I have a real-time connection to GP. So what KwikTag is doing is looking up from all of the vendors in GP, and if I forgot or maybe it wasn't correct, of course I can come in and browse and find that specific vendor in my list of vendors from GP. But in this case, Advanced pulled up right away. I know this is the right company, so that's the vendor that I'm going to go ahead and select. And as you noticed, the rest of my header information automatically populated based on the fact that I typed AD and it found Advanced Office Systems. So I copy and paste the invoice number over here. And of course, if you wanted to add OCR on the front end of this, we can have all of this data extracted and populated for you automatically. Some people choose to do that based on either the volume of their invoices or the different requirements in their business. And so we'll work with you to determine if that's something that might be a good fit for your organization. But in this case, we'll go ahead and just do a couple of steps of data entry. And that was really the amount and the document number. Now, I added something unique to this document number because we do a duplicate check inside of KwikTag and inside of GP so that we don't process any duplicate invoices. Now, once I have that header information, just like I'm in GP, by the way, you probably noticed that the view of this screen inside the GP Pro client that's a KwikTag product looks and feels very much like GP. Well, that's not an accident. We designed it that way because everybody who uses GP today can log into the beginning of their workflow process and have that same experience. All of the fields are laid out the same, the lookups are the same, down to the search buttons and the arrows and what they do in your system are exactly the same in the GP Pro client as they are in GP. So this is a KwikTag product. This is where your invoices are going to start. They're going to end in GP, but we made the experience very similar so that there isn't a great learning curve and there isn't a lot of challenge for people to get used to this change in process because the product and the environment looks and feels exactly the same as GP, which is something, of course, that they're very used to and comfortable with. So back to our GL distributions. When I click distributions here, I'm pulling in the defaults from the vendor card. So no data entry needed there if, in fact, I have default GLs already set up on my vendor. If I did, of course, need to make updates there, I could do a lookup into my account codes and select them just like I would in GP as well. So we know, remember, that we're sending all of our invoices from Advanced Office Systems to our CFO for approval. And this person's calling and yelling at me, so I definitely want to rush it to the CFO so I can get it approved and paid as quickly as possible. So I'm going to put a little comment here that says, please rush payment. So let my CFO know that we're really in a hurry for this. Now, I mentioned we want to minimize the data entry and risk of any sort of error. One way that people choose to do that, as well as having this real-time lookup and direct connection to GP, is we have a feature called Save as Template. So if I wanted to save this particular invoice as a template, I can say Advanced and call it Portfolio Cases. And the next time that we order cases, because I have to order these quite frequently, it's going to pull in all of the information exactly as it is here, except for the document number and date, because of course we would expect those things to be different, but even down to the amount, that if I want to change it the next time because it's different, of course I can, but it's going to pull everything in exactly as it is. So I don't have to worry about any, fat fingering anything or data entry errors, because it's going to pull up the template just as it is here as I've created it. So our role as AP manager now is done. We have entered the correct information here basically by selecting a couple of pieces of information and then copying and pasting the document number as the invoice number and putting in the dollar amount. So AP manager's job is done. We're now submitting this invoice to our CFO for review and approval. If there was more than one level of approval required, I could either select that as the AP manager and select approval level 1 and approval level 2, or I could route it to the first level of approval and they could choose who's next. So then as the AP manager, I just go on to the next invoice in my queue and I work through my normal stack of invoices that now is, of course, a digital list of invoices that I'm going to work through and process. And my job continues to do that. Now, as approver, we see that we get an email notification there. And so we're going to log into our QwikTag Anywhere experience as Mary CFO, because we're the ones responsible for approving this invoice. So I'm going to log in there, but let's take a look while that's loading up at what this email experience is like. So if I'm on the road, if I'm traveling, if I'm at a coffee shop or an airport or whatever, and I do this all the time, I just pull up my phone and I can see I've got invoices or expense reports or time off requests or any other sort of document that's been routed to me for approval. It makes it really simple because QwikTag attaches the document, whatever it may be, that requires my approval. Of course, here I can see the invoice we just worked together, and I can see all of the pertinent details, all the header information about the vendor, the dollar amount, and all of that. I can come down and see the GL codes here, and I have an action to approve or reject right from my email or my phone. If I'm doing it on my phone, it presented with this email. So I click approve, it creates the reply message, it puts approve, thanks. All I need to do is click send. If I choose to reject that message because I see something that's incorrect here, then I can reject it and send it back to accounting, and then they can handle it from there. So I have this option for email approval. However, if I'm at my desk most of the time and I know that, check runs are on Thursdays, I'm probably going to make some time on Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, let's say, to go through all of the invoices that have been routed to me for approval so that I've got time to review everything. So in that case, I'm going to most likely come into my web client experience. Again, QwikTag shows our web client as KTX. And I have all of these invoices here for approver selection. So these are all the ones that have been routed to me to do something with. Now, my options as the CFO for approval, here's the one we're working with, are to approve, reject, or delegate. If I was responsible for editing something when I came into GL codes here, I would have that option to edit them here as well. I can also see the workflow history, and we see the note here from Mary, please rush payment. So, okay, great, I've got a handle on that. And if I am, let's say, going to be deciding that this has to come out of somebody else's budget, maybe I'm going to choose to delegate that to a colleague or somebody else on my team. Now, again, if I reject it here, I've got to put comments in. I have to tell AP why I'm sending it back to them. Most commonly, either the codes are incorrect, the amount is incorrect, or maybe we're having some issue with this vendor and I want them to put it on hold for a period of time. I don't want a rush payment. I want them to wait. That's not likely going to be the case if somebody's calling and yelling at you and you need these products, but nonetheless, you have those options: approve, reject, delegate, and of course the drill down. And we can see the document, of course, right here. And if I scroll to the right, I see all of that same detail about this particular invoice. So in my normal scenario, I'm going to go through this list relatively quickly right before a check run, right? I'm going to take a look at the invoice. I'm going to scroll down and see that one. I'm going to scroll down and see that one. And I'm just going to go, everything looks good, approve, 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 reject, whatever. So we'll say here, rush approved. So we'll go ahead and put a comment in there. We don't need to put a comment in here if we're approving it, but we will so that we can follow it along in our workflow experience here. So what have we done so far? Well, our vendor emailed in their invoices and we received them into the KwikTag GP Pro client. And in this case, we did some initial, we'll call it data entry, although it was really selecting a few data points and moving the transaction to the next point of approval. So we selected the approver, we clicked submit, and we saved it as a template. So next time it's going to be super easy when we receive that invoice in. We routed it to our CFO for approval. They reviewed the information, they clicked approve, and now that invoice is waiting for us inside of GP in what we call the KwikTag work queue. So if you noticed, I went into the payables transaction entry and I went to the additional menu. That's where KwikTag comes to life. We'll go back and take a look at that in just another second. And we come into our work queue and we can see the invoice. Here's the one that we're working with. I expanded these workflow comments so we could see them right away. It says, Mary said, please rush payment. CFO said, rush approved. And I can right click and view this document just so that I have that, final checkpoint of making sure this is in fact the invoice that we're trying to rush the payment on. Now, I have all of these invoices that have been approved. I can hover and see the GL codes. I've got this documentation thread. I can show all of the details if I want to. When I right click and view this little window, it gives me everything at a glance, including the GL codes. And I can then select one or many of these. Like let's say I want to select all of these and put them into the batch because it's right around the time we're going to do the check run. In our case, we're just going to select the one that we're working with, but just know that that multi-select batch creation is an option for you. So I'm going to create these into a new batch here. We're going to call them 001 Emergence so that we can find our own little batch of any invoices or expense reports that we happen to put into it. It disappears, that invoice disappears out of my work queue. And now when I come back into my payables transaction entry screen, I can see right at the top of my list, there's my voucher. Save transactions to the other one, save the changes to the other one I was working on. And I can see this created the batch ID. Of course, I could select and put them into a current batch, or I could have GP default to the next available batch for me. So those are all options that I have when I select all of those invoices and put them into a batch inside a GP. So I've now got this payables transaction entry created for me automatically. Again, no duplicate data entry, no chance of risking any misinformation getting into GP, because I know that if this invoice got here to this point, it's already been coded, it's already been edited if that was required, it's already been approved. It's only going to get here if it's been fully approved. I see all of the transaction information has been created. I go to my GL distributions. Of course, those are already there. And now when I come back to this little additional menu, this is again where KwikTag comes to life. Tag, view, search, view work queue, delete documents, and about. All of those things are KwikTag specific functionality. Now when I come here and go view documents, that invoice that we were working with is forever and always associated with this particular payables transaction entry, but it's stored for me in KwikTag. Well, what's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is that my non-GP users, not everybody in our organization uses GP, right? So my non-GP users can now access those documents if they have the right to, if they have permissions to, and they can see the workflow history. This comes into play very frequently during quarter end, period end, year end, audit time. Sometimes you've got a specific team that's going to help with audit. They're going to, right now, they're running up and down the halls, or maybe to offsite storage, or to wherever you have things manually, physically stored on paper, and going through box after box, after file cabinet, after file cabinet, after manila folder, you get the idea, and pulling out the papers that the auditors say they want the backup for. I want to see these checks. I want to see these vendor invoices. I want to see these payments. I want to see who approved them. I want to see who coded them. want to see how they were allocated, and oh, by the way, I need all of that right now. So what that gives you access to is now that team and or your auditor can quickly log into KwikTag and find all of that information at the click of a button, and it's literally at their fingertips. We're back to the digital fingertips now. We don't need to rely on the paper anymore. Now, a common question that we get at this stage is, great, well, where is that information stored? I don't want information corrupting my GP database. I have limited resources. I don't want to have any more things in that system. So, well, that's great. This comes to life, this additional menu comes to life with KwikTag through what we call our KwikTag connector. What that means is that we store everything, the data about the documents themselves, the images, the links to what they are related to inside of GP or other areas of KwikTag in KwikTag. It is just by virtue of our connector that they are visible for you here. So everything gets stored in the KwikTag database. They're just accessible for you here inside of GP. And you can even search for documents inside a GP, even if they're stored anywhere in KwikTag. Now, a distinction of that I'll point out as it relates to, say, the native document attach features inside a GP is that you can attach a document inside a GP using native data doc attach if you know if it's enabled, first of all, for a specific module, and if you know which transaction that document was associated with. But there's no way for you to find it if you need to after the fact, unless you know exactly what transaction it's associated with. With KwikTag, you can search for that information right here within GP using the KwikTag connector, or you can come back over to the web client and search for information here. So we make it very simple for you to find documents, even if you're not a GP user. So let's just say we need to find that advanced office system invoice, and we can see that we've got 1,728 hits. I happen to like that invoice, so I use it quite a bit, of course, in my demonstrations, but it gives all of those results back to me in a very short order, and I can see what drawers in KwikTag they live in, and of course, if there is a specific one that I'm looking for, I can drill down and find that very easily as well. So let's go back over to drawers for just a moment, and we're going to take a quick look at the expense management side of the house. So remember, we're focusing mostly on AP. So the AP process that we just looked at was invoices are coming in. Ideally, again, now we've got our vendors emailing them in to streamline that process. Our AP manager has a similar experience to GP. It looks and feels and functions and even is directly connected to GP, meaning the minute a vendor gets added, it's visible in KwikTag Pro Client. The minute something changes on the default or the vendor card or the payment terms or the GL codes or anything like that, instantly available in the GP Pro Client. So similar experience. They do their step one of kicking off the workflow, and it gets routed for approval. Upon final approval, one or many levels, the payables transaction entry automatically gets created in GP, and the document is associated and attached to that particular transaction, and then visible, of course, in KwikTag. So a similar thing happens with receipts and expense reports. However, this solution is purpose-built and designed specifically for receipts and business travelers, and or maybe you've got consultants or agents or professional services teams that are working on behalf of a division of your company or behalf of a client, or you're working on a project that's billable, you need to track your receipts and expenses and that sort of thing. So we have built a solution for expense management called Kwik Expense that leverages the same workflow engine, but the process is different because it's designed for receipts and expense management. So the experience here is, let's say I'm traveling and I come back and I've got this stack of receipts. Well, no more. Now I take a picture of my receipt with my phone the minute that I have it, and I send it straight in to KwikTag. So it's waiting for me when I come back, usually Fridays or so. I'll catch up with this sort of thing, and I'll say, okay, great, I've got to tag some receipts. I've got to tell my company what I was doing here and give some information about these receipts. So let's say I'm traveling for an event and I'm working, of course, on behalf of Fabricam, our favorite GP company. And if I was entering these receipts on behalf of a staff member, I could select on behalf of here. In my case, I'm going to do it for myself. But in this case, you could do it either way and based on your organization. So I have to give KwikTag a little bit of information, but it sends all these receipts and they're waiting for me in my queue, or I can upload them as you just saw there. And then here's where we start to tie again our GP integration in. I have a list of departments. So I'm going to say I'm doing this for professional services, and this is a meal, of course, and it's a reimbursable payment. And the line amount is $6. Now, I just entered layman's terms information from drop-down lists that I selected because I'm the business traveler. I collected this receipt when I had breakfast at wherever I was on behalf of my professional services team because I was working with a client. Now, I don't know the GL codes. I don't know how accounting is going to treat this. I just know I got this receipt and I need to give it some information so the system knows what to do with it and where to put it and how to route it. Well, it's all very simple because these are very easy to read and understand drop-downs. What's happening on the back end, KwikTag is mapping those layman's terms descriptions to a GL code. We work with you to determine how that is based on your GL segments and your business processes. And of course, if I was billing this to a client, I would select that client here, and that could be reported on as well. So I submit this receipt line item. I'm going to go ahead and submit this receipt, and then it's ready to go. So I've probably got a couple other receipts that are waiting. So I can then say, okay, great, I'm ready to create my expense report. Well, this is really tough. I don't know about you, but in past lives, I've had the experience where I had to create an expense report from scratch using an Excel spreadsheet and finding all of my receipts, hoping I got them all right. And we'll call this Miller. What's today, 5/30/2018, and submit. But I've had to, in the past, create an Excel spreadsheet, look for all of my receipts, hope that I got them all, route them to somebody in corporate by putting them into a big Manila folder, an envelope, mailing them to somebody, and waiting for that person to enter the information, and then route it for approval. And then that goes to corporate once it's finally approved. And I have no visibility. Once I put that envelope in the mail and stapled my receipts to it, hopefully I took a copy of them before I put that in the mail, I have no visibility otherwise into that process. I have no visibility into that expense report. And oh, by the way, if I forgot a receipt, too bad. I'm probably never going to find it, and I'm not going to see it again. But by taking a picture of my phone, I have captured those receipts now very quickly, so I can see them right away. And we can also see if we have expense reports that are ready for us to review because we just told KwikTag to go find any receipt that was reimbursable in nature for a given date range. So now what's happening is we're logged in as Mary CFO. It's got these receipts, and I can then submit it for approval. So KwikTag created the expense report for me. I can see that it's currently pending, and all I have to do is click send, and it's going to route to whoever it needs to for approval. Now, when I have that finally approved, just like I do with invoices, I can come back over to GP, and if we look in our additional work queue, you'll see that there are several quick expense transactions waiting to be submitted into KwikTag as well. So you can see here I've got Amex, I've got some for M. Miller, I've got others for other members of my team. And in this situation, I can view the document. It's already been created for me, and it's the Excel file that was built by KwikTag and routed for approval and the like. And of course, I get an email notification for it, just like I do for invoices, and I can approve the same way. So again, integration, automation, everything available at your fingertips, including the workflow history available for you in KwikTag, whether you're in the finance team or whether you're the actual user who wants to see, hey, where's my payment? What's the status of that? The other thing is that if you're a corporate credit card user and you need the ability, let's log back over to Mary as our accounting user here. If you're a corporate credit card user, I can see that I need to reconcile receipts that are coming in from all of my different users. And what's going to happen there is that everybody's going to have their own credit card statement. And when the invoice, when the statement first comes into KwikTag, I can see that these line items are red. As those receipts get processed by those users, well, they're going to turn green. That's going to tell accounting, hey, you don't need to chase these people anymore for these receipts. KwikTag's going to send an email notification and say, hey, Mary, you really need to submit this gym receipt and this event flight information because we need to pay the Amex bill. So it's going to really make it easy for the corporate AP team. They don't have to be the bad guy anymore, and they don't have to cut up the statement so that they can route just those segments of the expense report statement to the individual users. They're only going to see the ones that they're responsible for because we break it down by user and send those notifications around. So corporate credit card reconciliation is very easy as part of that process as well. Now, I'm going to switch back over to my slides here and just highlight a few more topics as we continue the conversation. Now, I mentioned, remember that KwikTag is at our core the document management system integrated with GP. For all of those digital drawers that you saw, we have the corresponding screens, 79 of them to be exact, inside of GP where you can tag documents. So we looked at the work queue, but from a document management standpoint, it's just as easy to drag and drop, upload, drag an email, anything like that to associate an additional document with transactions inside of GP. You get this little tag dialog box and you associate the document that way. Very quick, very simple. You have that inside of 79 different screens. So by way of example, let's say you start working with a new vendor and you want to associate a contract or a payment term or a tax form or something like that with the vendor transaction. You get that same tag dialog box. You associate the document with the vendor card and you now have that accessible and visible for you inside a KwikTag. And same thing for any other of, sales orders, purchase orders, other areas, employee cards, hiring records, all those sorts of things. So inside the payables transaction entry, of course, we also saw that we have the work queue, which is where approved invoices go to have their batch creation happen. So the final step in that, of course, is that the invoices are associated with the documents. And of course, they kick off in a process that looks and feels very much like GP, and we can save those templates, save those invoices as templates so that we can accelerate our data entry. And we're creating the entire end-to-end AP automation workflow. Now, a little bit about expenses. We talked about what that solution looks like, but let's talk a little bit about why. When you look at your organization today, if you have individuals that are submitting expense reports, the reality is that every single time you have a manually processed expense report, remember I talked about creating an Excel spreadsheet, stapling my receipts and mailing it around, that costs an average of $26.60 per expense report. So as you can imagine, that adds up very quickly. And if your organization is like many of these, you fall into the category of probably somewhere between 500 and maybe 2,500. Maybe you're in the 5,000 range or higher. But you can see that the majority of companies submit less than 500 reports, and then a good number of them represent submitting somewhere between 500 and 10,000 expense reports within their organization. So let's look at even the lowest of those numbers. At 500 expense reports at $26.60 each, that adds up pretty quickly. And to do it manually can create inefficiencies and process delays, manual data entry. You'll see a lot of the same challenges here that we looked at for invoice processing that's done manually and with paper. So in this situation, we see that the manual data entry and the inefficient process, the lack of visibility into spend, and the long time that it takes to get your employees and your contractors reimbursed are certainly pain points, and why you would look then to automate your expense management process as well. So again, even if we look at the lowest numbers of 500 expense reports per month, that costs on average about 13,000 US just to process those things manually. So when you add that one system that does the capture, the integration, and the automation of the paper that lives in your organization today, you get a complete audit trail. So you can search by vendor, by check, by invoice, by date. And there's a lot of other things that we can go into more deeply if you decide to have an individualized demo. We're happy to show you the rest of this features and options and drill down ability and that sort of thing. But you can quickly create that audit view that we talked about when auditors come in once a year, twice a year, and the like. So you have instant access to that information. And of course, easy search and navigation, whether you're a GP user or not. You can see the invoices, you can see other documentation, you can see if they went through a workflow and what the status of those documents is today. And then you would think about any other area of your business. So a lot of organizations start with AP because that's where the majority of the paper lives. That's where the biggest pain point is. And frankly, it's usually a small team. And that team is frustrated and stressed. And they're the ones taking those angry phone calls from vendors saying, hey, where's my payment? And let's face it, sometimes they don't know. They don't have visibility because an invoice is sitting on somebody's desk, maybe not even in their office location, but they're the ones getting the phone call. So they're stressed and they feel it and they know what it's like to have to deal with not having access and not having visibility. So oftentimes this process automation, this digital transformation starts with AP and sometimes human resources, as they're a very closely related sister department, let's say, to accounts payable. And then from there, organizations go, hey, now that we have this document management platform, let's call it, and system where we can put things, we can look down the hall and across the building and across our offices, regardless of where they may be, because multi-location is really difficult to find something on paper, of course. And, let's try to centralize these things. Let's create a site for legal and create a site for accounting and for marketing and for sales and for customer orders and the like, contractors, services, vendors, whatever. Let's have all of those things live under one roof. So truly we become the one system that is the document repository where we can manage and capture any document, but then also that central source for automating any process. Like I mentioned, we use it for time off requests and expense reports and vendor documents and hiring and all sorts of, if it's a document that lives in our business, and often this happens with our customers as well, then it lives in KwikTag. So it's easy to support. And these left-hand side features just show some additional multi-currency, intercompany, key to act, binary stream, all of those sorts of additional features that your organization might find necessary because you work with GP, then just understand that KwikTag supports those as well. And I always like to show our Kwik Tag Family snapshot, because what this represents is that this is not you have to be a certain company size or a certain company industry. Our strongest industries are represented in healthcare and professional services and nonprofits and financial services, manufacturing. And then we have everything from professional sports teams to nationwide and worldwide retailers. So for any organization that's challenged by paper and those problems that we've talked about, data entry, lack of visibility, lost documents, late payments, all of those different factors come into play. And the reality is that all of these companies have faced that same paper problem that probably brought you to this conversation today. So certainly, if you're struggling with any of those issues, let's have a conversation about how we can help you make the paper go away. And certainly then the company-wide one system, how the other areas of the benefits. So automation gives you company-wide productivity increases, efficiency increases. Certainly your invoices, when you're talking specifically about AP, they're processed faster, they're centrally located, they're accessible from within GP and in KwikTag for your non-GP users. And finance and managers, those people that are getting those questions today, now have visibility into every step of the process. And as we've talked about, audit and compliance regulations are now no longer a pain, but actually quite easy, and you can find things at your fingertips. So a few highlights of ImageTag. We were founded in 1997, so we're 21 years old. We're a Microsoft development partner, and we were in fact the first to integrate with the Microsoft ERP systems, and certainly we go deeper than anybody. As I mentioned, 79 different screens that we're connected to inside of GP, and similar numbers in the other ERP suites in Microsoft Dynamics. And as a result, we've got more than 120,000 business users around the globe. We're 100% US-based support, and we have a great relationship with Emergence and the team there to work with you and help understand your business process needs and challenges, as we can help you automate any business process in your organization. I've highlighted a couple of things here. Certainly, if you want a demonstration that drills into any of these areas, key to act or binary stream and the like, we're happy to set that up for you as well. And I would just like to call this link to your attention. You can find more information at kwiktag.com/emergence, and that page is specific to our relationship with Emergence. You can find some additional supporting materials and videos and all of those sorts of things, and learn more about how KwikTag can help you. And at this time, then, I'm going to turn it back to Chantel for questions. And have we had questions come in during the course of our conversation today, Chantel?
We have. Thank you, Mary. So yeah, guys, we'll go ahead and take those questions now. And just a quick reminder that if you haven't submitted your question yet, please do so now as we go through them. The first one is, what is the typical implementation timing, Mary?
Sure. So there's actually two parts to that answer, and we get that question all the time. So don't feel alone. The answer is that there's a short-term solution, and then there's a little bit longer. I won't call it long-term, but a little bit longer. If what you're looking for is the document management platform, the make the paper go away, let's just capture all of our business documents, that can be in literally less than a week. We connect with your team at Emergence. We work with you to set up a KwikTag server. We connect it to GP, and it's done. So typically within 3 to 4 business days, and the majority of that time is us trying to find time on each other's calendars that actually works to connect. And as soon as that's done, we connect the servers, and you have access to tag, view, and search documents inside of GP in those 79 screens. Less than a week. Now, if you want to look at AP automation and the workflow requirements around that, that typically takes somewhere between 30 to 45 days. And again, the reason for that typically is it takes time for us to get the IT connection on your side or the resources available to all come to the table and understand what those actual workflow requirements are, what your approver, we call it an approver matrix, what that looks like, how many levels of approval, what conditions require additional routing, all those sorts of things. It's really just the communication in that takes a little bit of additional time because we want to get it right. And then we want to make sure that you have time to test it and make sure that it is in fact what you're expecting. And then of course we help you move it to production. I've seen it done in as little as 2 weeks. Typically it takes somewhere between 30 to 45, sometimes 60, depending on your timing and availability. So short term, if you need to get a document management platform in place, do it in less than a week. If you need workflow and automation, then we work with you based on your timing to make sure that that can get done as needed.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
Sure.
The next question is, what can we expect in terms of ROI?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's 2 things that we do to help you with that. The first is we have an actual ROI tool, an ROI calculator. And you might say, well, that's pretty self-serving because you created the ROI tool. And while I agree that it sounds that way, we actually base it on our 21 years of customer data experience and industry research and what people have told us from other outside independent organizations. So we built this tool to help people understand based on their document volume, the size of their team, the cost today of what they're doing manually to figure that out. And the tool typically comes up with some number like you're going to have payback in 2 to 4 months. And even we go, okay, that's probably kind of crazy. And then we talk to our customers. So the other data point then is the customers that actually have been tracking this for some period of time, and they tell us, we typically get ROI, we've seen ROI in 6, no longer than 12 months. So our average customer base sees ROI between 6 and 12 months. The ROI tool suggests usually about a half to 2/3 of that. But of course, the data is always perfect, right? The data takes into all of the research of everything falling into place exactly as it were, check all the boxes and everything is running like magic. Well, we all know that magic isn't always the reality, but our customers do tell us between 6 and 12 months is when they experience ROI. And we have plenty of customers who would share their story with you and help you understand what that would look like in your organization. Yeah, great question.
Great. Okay, the last one that we have is, how do we know the best area of our business to start with when we decide to go paperless?
Mm-hmm. So we work with you and we work with Emergence as your consultant to really understand the greatest pain point in your area. And what we typically recommend is look outside of your office. Where are the file cabinets? Where are the boxes? Where's the paper stacked up? And let's break that down into phases. What's the short-term, easiest path to a quick ROI and a quick way for your team to understand that they can go digital, that they can have access to digital documentation. And so we start with, frankly, the biggest area of challenge within your organization. And oftentimes that's where the greatest amount of paper lives. And then what we do is we break that down based on a timeline and a priority. So most people say, okay, great. The biggest problem is in accounting and I've got 16 file cabinets and I have no visibility and yada, yada. And so we say, okay, great. Let's start with the current period. Let's start with the current period and put a stake in the ground. And going forward, all of your documents will then be digital. And then as you have time, typically 6 months, a year at a time, you begin to add in those archived files so that eventually you get it all into the system. But you can't think of it like boiling the ocean because then it seems like this impossible task. But we encourage you to look down your halls, where are the greatest pain points and certainly where does the greatest amount of paper live, because oftentimes that's where you're going to have those manual challenges that we talked about earlier.
Great. It looks like we've covered all the questions, but if you'd like to discuss your company's requirements specifically in a bit more detail to see if KwikTag would be a good fit for your organization, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Rob. Our contact details are on the screen there, and we'll be happy to assist you with answering any additional questions that you might have, or doing a demo specifically for you guys and addressing some of your business challenges. Finally, if you think others in your organization would get value from this webinar, it was recorded today and will be available and sent to you, so please feel free to share it with your colleagues. And I'd just like to thank you, Mary, for presenting today. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thanks again to everybody else for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time.